not dig this, bro. But dig this.
So, do you know what the first song is to sample a beat? I thought I did, but it turns out I didn't. But now, I think I might know what it is. So let's check it out. Now, first, I thought the first record to sample a drum beat, at first I thought it was Marley Scratch by Marl featuring MC Shan. Now, the reason why I thought it was that is because I remember a long time ago when this came out, 1985, before that, like 1982, 83, 84, the songs that were being played, the hip hop songs, it was like either electro hip hop, which is like drum machines and synthesizers and that kind of stuff, or it was like the Sugar Hill Gang, where they had like, studio musicians playing old disco breaks and the MCs were rhyming over that, making songs over that. So that was pretty much the two styles of hip hop music at the time. There were also breaks, like original breaks from old songs from, 60s, 70s, even early 80s. But on the West Coast, we weren't really hip to that yet, It was just, like I said, electro, or like just kind of like drum machine, slowed down drum machine, synthesizer, or, disco kind of dance music, hip hop. So anyway, but when this record came out, Marl, man, when I heard this, it sounded so much different than everything else. I couldn't call it. I couldn't pinpoint what it was that made this record sound so dirty, because it sounded dirty as hell and it was funky, man. And that's all it was just drums, MC Shan on the mic rapping, and Marl cutting it up, on the breakdowns. But that was enough, because the drums had so much attitude. It didn't need anything else, and it was so different. And so that was a game changer. And in my opinion, that was the start of the golden era of hip hop. In my opinion, I call it from 85 to like 95, a good solid decade of golden era hip hop. In my opinion, I'm an old dude, so we all think different. Anyway, man, so then I heard Marl in an interview, like probably early 2000s, and he was talking about this record, Marl Scratch, and he was saying how he was claiming that he was like the first hip hop producer to sample a beat and use the beat for the song. And I was like, yeah, that's totally true, because I remember back in 85 when it came out, it was so different, and all the songs he did after that were just more samples and eventually drum loops and all that stuff. So I totally credited Marl for coming up with that. And so then what else was going on here? All right, so then I was like, you know what, samples in hip hop, I started to pay attention to that, later on, and I was like, wait a minute, Grandmaster Melly Mel and the Furious Five, they had this song called Pump Me Up, and the whole song was like samples. It was pretty much the song Trouble Funk. They had a song called Pump Me Up, and Grandmaster Melly Mel and the Furious Five, they were just rapping over that instrumental, but they were using the vinyl record to play that song on their recording like it was a show. Because like back in the 70s, that's the original hip hop formula. The DJ is spinning two of the same copies of a record, so he can keep the break going while the MCs do their routines over that and make a song. And that's what this one is doing right here. Their DJ Vicious Lee, that was their DJ. He was playing that record and they were rapping over it. But this was a studio recording, so even though they were using the vinyl to rap over of the Trouble Funk record, it was tracked in the studio in a way that kind of simulated how a DJ would do it live at a show, because that, the song is tight and there's no mistakes. So I know they didn't do that in one take as a routine. I doubt it, dude. Anyway, so but then I was thinking, you know what? They're not using a sample. I mean, this whole claim is like, what song sampled a drum beat, so using a sampler, to manipulate the beat or to loop it or something. So this doesn't really count because they're just playing, the record in the studio. So then I was thinking, well, what else? What else could it be? And I was thinking, West Street Mob, Breakdance, Electric Boogie. So this song, the whole song has the Apache drum break in it. Now, but that Apache drum break, it's a long drum break. I mean, that break is at least a good 2 minutes probably of just drums. And so, but on this song, you can hear the DJ scratching the vinyl of Apache, scratching the drum break in. So again, it's like the Pump Me Up song. They're just using, the Incredible Bongo Band record in the studio. And on that song, there isn't really any rapping. It's more just like DJ scratching, and I guess maybe there might be some vocals here and there, just little catchphrases, but they're not using a sampler. That's all turntable work, and it's tracked as well because it's very tight and there's no mistakes, and they have access to a studio. Why wouldn't they use a multi-track recorder, to make that song? And that's pretty much what they did. So then I was thinking, okay, well, they're not using a sampler, but another record that came to mind was this one. The Adventures of Grandmaster Flash on the Wheels of Steel. Dude, one of the best titles for a song ever, right? So what Grandmaster Flash was doing, he was kind of doing the same thing. He was just playing a DJ set in the recording studio. And I'm pretty sure that was also tracked on a multi-track recorder, and because it's super tight. I'm not saying it's impossible to do that because it's kind of like a quick mix, but I don't know for sure. I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't track it. I mean, they have the resources to do it. So, but that record too, it's all these different records being mixed, but he's not using a sampler. Whoever's in the studio engineer is not using a sampler. So this doesn't really count either. So then I'm like, okay, well, what else is there? And then, bam, UTFO, Roxanne. Now, I never thought about it when this record came out. Even when I heard that Marl record, Marl Scratch, and I heard the dirty drums, I knew that there was something going on there. With this one, I didn't know what was happening here because, man, this Roxanne record, it's such a dope production. It's clean, and it's so clean that I just didn't realize that they're sampling Big Beat by Billy Squier on that record. And because it's so clean and it fits so seamlessly with the track, I didn't even, it flew over my head. I mean, I was also like, 12 years old when that song came out too. So I was far removed from the studio and didn't know anything about, drum machines or samplers or any of that stuff. But, with the Marl scratch, it was very obvious. With this one, not so much. They snuck that sample in there clean, and it's super clean. But yes, they are using a sampler to sample the Big Beat, Billy Squier. and they're not just looping it. I mean, because I can hear the sound of two different snares when the big beat part is coming in. You know, when the educated rapper is dropping his verse, that's when the big beat break comes in, and you can hear the two different snares. So they're looping it, at least one bar of a loop of that beat. But not only doing that, there's a part when the song begins, they're just using the kick of big beat, and that is triggered like solo. So they actually chopped up the beat too. So whoever produced that, they chopped it up and they looped it, and it's tight. It's super tight. And like you see, this is from 1984, 1 year before the Marley scratch record came out. So now I'm like, you know what? So whoever produced this, it's Full Force. They produced it. I wasn't thinking. Full Force produced this record. And I found out later too, I think Howie T had a hand on it too. But anyway, so they produced that record. So I was like, man, they are the ones who sampled a beat first on a record, on a song. And so I was satisfied with that answer. A little disappointed that it wasn't Marley Marl, but you know what? I mean, these things are happening. Hip hop back in those days, I mean, no one was keeping track of anything. I mean, it was pretty much just the wild, wild west. Things were just happening, and there's times where people, they come up with the same thing at the same time, even though they're isolated from each other. I mean, some of these things are just bound to happen. You're just gonna walk into it eventually, right? So anyway, so then I started to think more about this, and then I was thinking about that time we were in the studio, and that studio engineer, he was like talking about that group, Yes, Owner of a Lonely Heart, and I was like, dude, let me listen to that record. So this song, Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes, this song was a hit when it came out. Look at the year, 1983, before Roxanne, right? The UTFO record with Big Beat. So now, and I heard this, I eventually got the record. So when I got the record, I dropped the needle, and the first thing you hear is the sample drum break. And I'm like, whoa. And not only is it a sample drum break, it's a famous sample drum break. I mean, it's a drum break that is a classic break beat drum break, man, in the hip hop world. And that beat is Funk Incorporated's Kool is Back. That famous drum break that has the offbeat snare in there, and the stab, the horn and guitar stab. That's famous for DJs to scratch and everything too. And I was like, wow, dude. So this group, Yes, who had a big hit, Owner of a Lonely Heart, man, in 1983, that was on the top of the charts for weeks. I mean, I remember hearing that song on the radio, just in the air, everywhere when it came out. They had a music video too that was playing everywhere. I mean, that was a mega hit, dude. And I didn't even know they were sampling a drum break on that song. And that's not even a hip hop song either, man, which is, I'm just kind of like, man, I don't even know what's going on, dude. Like, here I was, thinking one of my favorite hip hop producers, Marley Marl, was the guy who was the first one to sample a drum beat, a drum break on a song, and it turns out it's not even him. It's this whoever produced, I think it was one of the band members in Yes who produced this record. Anyway, man, so this 80s rock pop group, they were the ones who sampled first this drum, beat on a record. And like I said, not just any beat, a classic break too, man. So I was kind of blown away. But before I made this video, I was like, you know what? Let me do a little bit of research because I'm kind of dropping knowledge here, and you know, I don't want to be wrong, right? So let me just take a quick search just to make sure I know what I'm talking about here. And it turns out that that isn't even the first record. It turns out that the first record is by this dude named John Kongos, a record that came out in 1971. The name of the song is called He's Gonna Step on You Again. And I guess this song right here, this record, it has an African beat from some old African record that is looped, and it's looped in time. So it's a steady loop. It's just looping like 1, 2, 3, 4, like looping. And then that loop fades up, and then this dude and his band start playing instruments over it. They start adding instruments to it, and they do the whole song over that loop. And I'm like, whoa, dude. This dude is straight. They're playing not over a click track. They're playing over a drum loop from an old African record, man, which it's in the ballpark of a breakbeat, man. And I'm just like, dude. And yeah, this song, it's like a, you know, it says here pop rock. It's kind of like, sounds kind of like a psychedelic rock, little kind of maybe folk sounding too. Anyway, man, it's far from a hip hop track. So I was totally wrong, dude. And that's bugged out. But that's what's cool about, you know, having this channel and making these videos is like, I'm here to nerd out on this kind of stuff because, you know, I think this stuff is cool and I'm into it. And if you're into it, I hope you got something out of it, you know, checking this out. And if, I don't know, maybe someone out there has more information. You know, I bet you anything, there's probably something earlier than this too. I wouldn't doubt it, dude. Because the technology of looping a reel-to-reel tape existed back then. A long time ago. The Beatles were like looping stuff, and Jimi Hendrix, and it was going on. Frank Zappa. So that was happening, man. But you know, like I said, this was a beat that was looping, and they were playing over the beat. So there you go, man. Sampling of a beat 101 right there, 1971. Hey, man, I hope you guys thought this was interesting. I thought it was cool to check out. And if you think it's cool, like the video if you want. If you wanted to subscribe, that's all good too. If not, just wait for the next one, man. I'm gonna try to put these out like every so often. Some good stuff. Anyway, man, that's it for this video. Peace and vinyl.